Imagine being 10 years old and watching your father lose everything overnight. For the greatest generation, the Great Depression was not a history lesson. It was their reality. You wore your brother's shoes until your toes bent because asking for new ones meant someone else did not eat. This extreme adversity forged a psychological armor called stoic pragmatism. They did not bury their feelings because they were cold. They buried them because in a world of hunger and world wars, processing emotions was a luxury they literally could not afford. If you recognize this pattern of silent endurance in your own family tree, comment the number 1 below. We are going to decode this legacy together so you do not have to carry it alone. But while this generation learned to endure, their children learned a completely different lesson: how to disappear. The silent generation, born between 1928 and 1945, arrived in a world that was already holding its breath. If you belonged to this cohort, you learned very early that visibility was a trap. You might remember the Dust Bowl, where the sky turned black at noon, and your mother placed wet rags over your face just so you could breathe. But the suffocating atmosphere was not just environmental, it was social. You came of age during the McCarthy era, a time when the Red Scare meant a neighbor could turn on a neighbor, and a single wrong opinion could destroy an entire family. From a neuroscientific perspective, this environment wired their brains for chronic hypervigilance. While their parents utilized the fight response to survive the war, this generation adopted the freeze response. In the wild, when an animal cannot fight a predator and cannot outrun it, it freezes. It blends in. It becomes invisible. For the silent generation, conformity was not a lifestyle choice. It was a biological shield. They did not choose stability over self-expression because they lacked creativity. They chose it because their nervous systems equated standing out with extinction. This explains why they became the most reliable workforce in history. They followed the rules with religious intensity because they had witnessed the brutal consequences of breaking them. They kept their heads down, their mouths shut, and the corporate ladders steady. But you cannot suppress human nature forever without consequence. That heavy silence created a vacuum, and the generation coming next was not just going to fill it, they were going to set it on fire. Enter the baby boomers, born between 1946 and 1964. If the previous generation was defined by silence, yours was defined by noise. You arrived, 76 million strong, into a world that seemed to be built specifically for you. The economy was exploding. Highways were paving over the past. And for the first time, the future looked like a promise, not a threat. But beneath those white picket fences, your brain was processing a terrifying contradiction. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. You were raised on extreme optimism, yet you spent your childhood practicing duck and cover drills beneath school desks, waiting for a nuclear flash. You were told the world was safe, yet you watched your heroes, JFK, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, assassinated on live television. Then came Vietnam. It was the first war Americans watched from their living rooms while eating dinner. You saw the body bags on the evening news, while the government insisted victory was near. This was a profound institutional betrayal. When the authorities you are supposed to trust lie to you, it rewires how you view power. You realize that if you want to be safe, you cannot rely on the system. You have to run it. If you are still watching, drop a number 3 in the comments. It shows you are committed to understanding the hidden forces that shaped who you are today, rather than just judging them. This betrayal explains the boomer paradox. It is why the same generation that marched against the establishment eventually became the establishment. The hippies became CEOs, not because they sold out, but because they learned that the only way to control the chaos was to take the wheel. They became masters of reinvention, but in their rush to secure the future, they completely overshadowed a smaller group of people sitting quietly in the back seat. This brings us to Generation Jones, the cohort born between 1954 and 1965. If the boomers were the main character, you felt like the extra who arrived after the cameras stopped rolling. You are technically boomers by birth year, but psychologically, you share almost nothing with them. While they were at Woodstock, you were in elementary school. By the time you were old enough to join the revolution, the war was over and the party was finished. Psychologists describe your defining experience as relative deprivation. This occurs when you compare your reality to the generation immediately before you and realize you have been shortchanged. You were promised the same American dream, but you graduated into an oil embargo, stagflation, and jobs that vanished before you could even apply. You watched mortgage rates hit 18%, effectively locking you out of the housing market that your older siblings had just effortlessly walked into. This timing created a unique psychological architecture. You witnessed the fall of Nixon during Watergate, which taught you that authority figures were not just fallible, they were liars. This stripped away the idealism of the 60s and replaced it with a gritty, adaptive pragmatism. You are called Generation Jones because you spent your youth jonesing or craving the stability that was always just out of reach. Let's try a quick psychological experiment on attention span. If you feel seen by this description, comment the number 0 below. If you think I completely missed the mark, go ahead and hit the like button. But while you were busy fixing what was broken, the next generation was about to grow up in a house where no one was home at all. That empty house belonged to Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. If you are watching this, you were likely the first latchkey kids. You walked home alone, let yourself in with a key worn around your neck, and navigated the hours between school and dinner without supervision. There were no cell phones to track you, no cameras to watch you, and no parents to entertain you. This specific childhood environment triggered a massive neurological shift toward hyper-independence. Your developing brain learned a fundamental truth. If you got into trouble, you had to get yourself out of it. You did not develop resilience because it was taught in a classroom. You developed it because there was no alternative. You drank from garden hoses, built forts in the woods, and existed in a state of true, unmonitored freedom that no subsequent generation will ever experience again. But this freedom came with a cost. You watched the economy crash in the late 80s. You watched your loyal parents get laid off as corporations invented the term downsizing. This shattered the social contract of loyalty. Psychologically, what many label as Gen X cynicism is actually protective realism. You learned early that institutions do not love you back. You stopped expecting a savior and started building your own lifeboats. You worked hard, not for a gold watch, but for your own survival. You became the most resourceful generation in history because you had to be. You learned that no one was coming to save you, so you did the only logical thing. You saved yourself. Ultimately, we need to realize that generational gaps are not conflicts of character. They are conflicts of context. The stoicism of the greatest generation, the silence of the traditionalists, the control of the boomers, and the skepticism of Gen X. These are not personality flaws. They are adaptive responses. They are the psychological armor our ancestors wore to survive the specific wars, depressions, and betrayals of their time. Psychology teaches us that judgment is often just a lack of context. When you look at your parents or grandparents today, try to see the frightened child hiding inside that armor. They did the best they could with the tools history gave them. Your task is not to fix them, but to understand them. Because when we replace judgment with curiosity, we stop repeating the trauma and finally start healing it. If this journey through history helped you understand your family a little better, subscribe to the channel. Let's keep decoding the human experience together.